Politicians are adept at changing public opinion by inventing new phrases such as enemy combatant and enhanced interrogation techniques. Does this expose some flaw in humans that we reason based on surface words rather than their underlying meanings?
I don't think it's a flaw of humans, and I'm not sure how much to determine. So there's two different questions there's a question you have to distinguish here. So go back to the propaganda model. That was a discussion of what the media are doing as institutions. And in fact, it generalizes to the intellectual culture much more broadly. But there's a separate question, and that is how much are people influenced by it? That's quite a separate question. Okay, so to what extent do people accept and internalize the doctrinal system that's, say, described by John Burns? Well, the answer is pretty complex when you look. So, for example, say take the Vietnam War. It's far enough back so we can think about it a little bit objectively, perhaps. If you look over the Vietnam War, there was never in the mainstream, and never is a strong word, but close to never, like 99.9%, a principled critique of the war. New York Times correspondent C.J. Chivers was there recently and talks about booming Grozny. It used to be rubble, now it's booming. They have electricity run by Chechens. Of course, the Russians are in the background, but great success. I mean, if Petraeus could achieve anything remotely like that in Iraq, he'd probably be crowned king, you know. But we don't praise Putin, at least we shouldn't. We condemn it, even though it succeeded in their terms, like the Germans succeeded in Vichy France. It was a French-run society, more or less stable, but we don't praise it. However, for ourselves, we take totally different principles. We never, almost never, permit or can even think of a principled critique of our own crimes. You can test it, and but what about public opinion? Well, there you get a striking gulf. So, for example, when the Vietnam War ended, everyone, serious analysts had to write a commentary on it. And the most interesting ones, as always, are way out are the ones at the left extreme of the mainstream. So, say, take Anthony Lewis of the New York Times, about as far out as you can get, and not be from Neptune or something. He wrote a critical commentary. He said the Vietnam War began with what he called blundering efforts to do good. Notice that that's mostly tautology. Since we carried it out, it was efforts to do good, period. No further discussion necessary. That's by definition. It was blundering because it didn't entirely work. So it began with blundering efforts to do good. But he says by 1969, come back to the date, it was clear to most of the world that it was too costly to ourselves. Okay, that's the left end of the critical spectrum. You can search and see if you can find anything that goes beyond that. Well, what did the public think? Well, we know. In 1969, it happens, the first general polls were taken of public opinion on the Vietnam War. General important ones, Chicago Council on Foreign Relations. And they continue to be taken up till today. Quadrennial. In 1969, 70% of the public said the war was fundamentally wrong and immoral, not a mistake. Try to find that anywhere in mainstream discussion. Okay? Good exercise. And those figures persist up until the latest polls, a little vacillation, but basically, this is a huge gulf between public opinion and intellectual elites. The doctrinal managers. And that's true on a lot of other issues. It's true on the Iraq War. It's true on the threat to invade Iran. It's true on national health care. It's true on relations with Cuba. Just run across the list. And it turns out there's a huge gulf between public opinion and intellectual opinion, hence doctrine, media and